Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Smash JT. Today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different and talking to you about my experiences of when I was a game tester. I was a game tester at Sony Online Entertainment back in 2007, I believe, and it was when I first moved out to San Diego, California. I didn't have a job, I didn't really have any direction, I didn't know what I wanted to do.
You mean like career? I thought about this quite a bit, sir.
I saw an ad on Craigslist for game testing, and I was like, well, I really like video games, and game testing's always been an idea I've rolled around in my head of giving a shot, so why not go for it? Fast forward to interviewing and going through all the process. They loved me, and they hired me for it. I had my first day, and I was like, oh my god, I'm actually a game tester. This is pretty crazy. Some of you guys might be asking what it is a video game tester actually does, and while they do play a lot of video games, what I realized was it's not exactly what you think it is. Like, they'll assign a certain section of the game to you, and you need to explore each given section at a given time and work with teammates at times to make sure that it's playable, there aren't game-breaking bugs in it, there aren't regular bugs in it. You have to enter every time that you find a hiccup in the game. You have to stop, put it in the bug tracking system. There's a ton that goes on behind the scenes when you're game testing that you never tell people about. The game that I worked on the most when I was at Sony Online Entertainment, when they were still around, was a game called Cash Guns Chaos, which was basically a top-down shoot-'em-up, just like Smash TV, but the camera was way more zoomed in and better graphics, a lot more variety in weapons. It's a fun game, but there was a lot that held it back from being great. You guys might have heard me talk about this before in a few other videos when I was talking about my game testing experience, but I'll go into a little bit more detail here for you just so you understand what exactly I did on a daily basis and how I really liked it and what made it really unique at the time. We were working on the game before the PlayStation 3 was released, so I had an actual PlayStation 3 piano black console at my desk and would be testing the games on this thing. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. They said if anyone was caught taking a picture or posting it on, was it MySpace at the time, that you'd get fired because it was just a prototype. They weren't actually showing it until E3, so it was really cool to have the actual system at my desk without the mass public knowing what it even looked like at the time. But anyway, back to testing. So when I was working on Cash Guns Chaos, there'd be days where I'd have the headset on and I'd just be listening to all the sounds and making sure that the sound effects were the right sound effects for the gun that was fired, for the enemy that was killed, for what you were walking on, the sounds that were made in the game, and the music to make sure the tracks didn't skip. I'd just sit there and listen to it for what felt like hours. I'm sure it wasn't that long looking back, but it's a long time of just listening to the music and making sure there weren't any hiccups with that as well. Now, common bugs that would occur would be like spawn points outside of the actual physical arena that you were fighting in, or enemies that you couldn't get to because they were spawned outside of the arena, or basic things like the dev just forgot to turn off infinite energy on the end boss, and you'd just be shooting them forever and they wouldn't die. You'd be like, hey, need to fix this because you can't progress to the next level until you make this a regular hit point on this boss. One of the more interesting bugs that I found in this game was further along in it, in like the Wild Wild West levels. I don't remember what level number it was, but there was a part in the game where you get to the Wild Wild West, you're shooting the enemies, and you just randomly die. We couldn't figure out what was causing the death, and we went through everything. I even had to get a VCR, record it, like physically put a tape in, record it, to show it to my boss and say, hey, look, I'm just randomly dying on this stage and I can't figure out why. They actually at first didn't believe me. They're like, oh, that bullet must have hit you, or that guy just hit you, didn't see him. And I'm like, no, I know what a hit is, I know what the hit detection is in this game, and I know I'm not getting hit by anything. So we need to figure out what is killing me on this stage. And long story short, they actually let me go to the dev's computer, sit with him, talk to him about what's happening to me. He'd actually show me on the screen while I'm playing it all the characters and numbers, all the code flying through, and pausing it and letting him see what's happening.
You get used to it. I don't even see the code. All I see is blonde, brunette, redhead.
And it turns out they forgot to turn off when the enemies were shot on that stage to actually kill them. So they just turned invisible. And so while you're walking around, if you walked over an enemy that you killed and they were invisible, they'd kill you. And it was extremely challenging to figure out something like that until we put all that kind of effort into it. But it was really rewarding to find out that, hey, I found like a game-ending bug that nobody could get through this level on because they forgot to turn off that death code or whatever it was. As far as the environment is concerned in the game testing world, it is literally nothing like what Grandma's Boy shows.
Thought you were good at this, man.
People always used to joke with me, oh man, yeah, I know what a game tester is. I saw Grandma's Boys, that Adam Sandler movie. Everyone must be super high all the time. No, nobody really did drugs. It was a different kind of environment. It was a very chill environment. Typically just gamers that love playing video games were all there playing video games together. And some really cool people that I met while I was doing it. One dude, Chase, always used to play the final countdown at the end of the day every day, so with like 15 minutes left on the clock, you hear him blasting the final countdown, and everyone would be like, alright, time to start packing up, guys, almost done for the day, that's the final countdown. Such great memories from those guys. A couple other games that I worked on while I was at Sony, there was another racing game like Grip Shift. It was pretty cool. You'd be on this track and you'd shoot up and be able to connect to another track and fly down. I think they made an HD remaster for that game years later after Sony Online wasn't producing that game anymore. But it's a really fun game. I had a blast with Grip Shift. Another cool game that I worked on was this game called Pirates Constructible Strategy Game Online. It's like the most obnoxiously long game title in history, but it was an awesome game. It was like chess on the water, and you'd play 1 versus 1, and you'd each have your pirate ships and be maneuvering them like Battleship kind of, but it would be more real-time than that. It's a lot of fun, and I feel like that game needs to make a comeback. I've never even heard of it since I left Sony. What a fun game that was. There are a ton of other games that I worked on while I was there, but just really dabbling in when they needed me, a few hours or a couple days on games. Cash Guns Chaos is a game that I really focused on while I was there, but there was a ton of different variety in that. And being Sony Online Entertainment, most of the games that they had that you needed work with was the EverQuest series or Champions of Norath or anything even slightly related to the EverQuest world I was working on, because they had a ton of related content in that series. And while it was perfect for the time in my life and I wanted to continue doing it, I noticed there wasn't nearly enough money being paid to actually feasibly sustain a living in Southern California while you're testing video games. So I had to move on from game testing for that sole reason. It was a ton of fun though, and I'm so glad that I had the experience. And I strongly recommend for any of you guys out there that love video games and have just a couple years to have fun in your life, do game testing. It's totally worth it. Assuming that you don't get put into one of those abusive companies like Electronic Arts or anything like that. Most game companies do treat you pretty well. So that's my story on my game testing in my life. I had so much fun doing it, guys. And if you guys have any questions about what it was like game testing that I didn't answer in this video, or you want to pick my brain on what it was like on a specific kind of thing that we worked on, let me know in the comments section below. And as always, thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you guys later.
On the left, 'cause they understood a brother that no